All right, hello everybody. Happy July and welcome to another episode of the Assassin's Read Book Club. Today we will be discussing the Templars Comics Volume 2, which is entitled Cross of War. Before we get started, just a quick note that the July book for the Assassin's Read Book Club will be Assassin's Creed Comics Volume 3 of the Assassins line called Homecoming. So we'll be going back to Charlotte de la Cruz's story and all of that. So, before we get started, we had a giveaway as always for Homecoming. Congratulations to the winners as always. And if you did not win a copy of Homecoming, please check out the description of the video where you can find an Amazon affiliate link to pick up your own copy. Now, why don't we dive straight into Cross of War? I'm going to be completely honest and say that this is probably my least favorite of the comics that I've read so far. There were a few things I liked, but mostly I was just not really super crazy about it. So we'll start with the likes. These ones carry over from the last episode about the first volume, Black Cross, which ironically is kind of one of my favorites of the comics I've read. Things I like that still carry over, I still like the art style. I think it's a nice change, the kind of darker, more gritty vibe. I still like going through a Templar story, seeing things from the Templar perspective. And in this case, there is more of the modern day, and so I really liked Otto Berg's portrayal. And even more than his portrayal, I really liked seeing how other people reacted to him. You have some instances of people kind of thinking he's just kind of a thug, and kind of underestimating him, and then other people like correcting them, saying that he's like one of the most dangerous people around. Which still plays into my criticism from last time, where it's like, why isn't Otto Berg just the Black Cross? Because he's clearly the most like capable, qualified person. I still don't understand that. Anyway, I mean, that actually pretty much wraps it up for the likes. The dislikes, to start off, I thought the story was too short. You might notice that this is actually only 4 issues of a comic. It's Templars issues 6, 7, 8, and 9. So it's only 4 issues. Generally, these comics have been 5 issues each. And in addition to that, they also have a much more significant modern day plot in this one. So not only are there fewer issues in Volume 1, they're also trying to do more with splitting the modern day and the historical. So I wasn't a really big fan of how that turned out, because I felt like there wasn't really much time to develop the historical side of things. It's really jarring to go from one extreme to the other, because Templars Volume 1 had basically no modern day at all, and so it was just this uninterrupted flow for 5 issues of like historical story, and I thought that was really well done, since these comics in general are shorter stories. So it's really jarring to go from that to having to split it between the modern day and historical here. So I didn't think there was much time to really develop either the historical or modern day very sufficiently in this volume. The other thing I disliked about the modern day in this is that I felt like there was no modern day progression. There's not, like, you could kind of skip this volume and you wouldn't really need to know anything from it, honestly. I feel like here's what gets revealed is that they're looking for the Kuinor. Okay, well, we already kind of figured that, right? And you find out that the assassins have it, but we already know that from Syndicate's DLC, The Last Maharaja, and technically kind of from Chronicles India, which contradicts The Last Maharaja on where the Kuinor is, but whatever. I mean, that's a whole separate issue, right? There's not really much that happens that's really necessary. You get the idea of the Black Cross from Volume 1. That's all you really need to know going forward, I feel like. So it felt kind of stunted, or kind of stalled a little bit in the modern day. And then probably my biggest complaint about this volume is it just felt convoluted. It felt like there were way too many plot points, and some of them were needlessly complex to me. Let me give a few examples. One is you have a modern day character who is part of the Bolden family line, going back into a memory where there is a Bolden character, but it turns out he's not related to that Bolden character, which seems like absolutely ridiculous to me. Like how coincidental is that, right? Like, that just seems needlessly kind of like shoehorned, like a weird plot point that was just kind of shoehorned in that I don't really get. In addition to that, there's more than one Black Cross. So the Bolden character you see in the past is like, they're kind of 2 Black Crosses, and it's like, you could say there's another one, and like, it's like, what? You have the modern day stuff with Violet continuing to kind of I guess, be an instrument of the First Will, slash kind of not being on the same side as Berg and the rest of the Templars. You have that going on. And then you have this whole thing with the Kuinor. And, like, it's just, there's so much going on for how little time they expend kind of on these subjects that some of these plot points felt just really superfluous and kind of unnecessary and not really helpful in a book that's so short. And then the last thing that I disliked about this volume is the representation of the Kuinor's powers, which has kind of feels like it has been changing every single time it comes up. So in its initial introduction in Assassin's Creed Brahmin, in those comics, it was said that it had the power to bind all the other pieces of Eden together, and that it was one of the most powerful pieces of Eden, basically. And there is kind of a nice aspect where they do reiterate in this volume that it is possibly the most powerful piece of Eden. But okay, so that's how it was initially described in Brahmin, right? You see it again in Assassin's Creed Chronicles India, and I could make a whole video about Chronicles games and like how much they fuck up the lore, but like we could do that another time. But in Chronicles India, it's basically used as a power source to power a to power a precursor box, which I thought was hilarious and not like in a good way. But it's like you have the most powerful piece of Eden. It's like, ooh, a battery for my box. Like, it's stupid fascination with the boxes in this series makes me so upset. But it is, and then in here it's portrayed as basically being an apple of Eden, where you have the multiple projections of yourself, like the copies of yourself you can project copies of yourself to your enemy, exactly like how Al-Mualim uses it in Assassin's Creed 1 and Ezio uses it in Assassin's Creed 2. And it's like, okay, what, like, I guess I can kind of understand that if it's the most powerful piece of Eden, it might have multiple things it can do. But to me, it feels more like they don't really agree on what, like, all these different writers just don't have any consensus on what the Kuinor can do. And so each one just kind of makes up whatever is convenient for them. And it's almost like this, like Deus Ex Machina piece of Eden that can be whatever you need it to be in that moment. And so I can kind of understand being like, oh, you can use it in different ways, like it's so powerful, it has multiple purposes, and you can even use it like a battery if you want. But it just, like, I don't know, it feels like there's no consistency between the portrayals of the Kuinor, and that I've said this many times in the past, when it feels like the world when the world you're building has no consistency, then personally I start to lose my mental investment in the world and feel like if it feels like anything can go and that there's no rules governing anything in your lore building, then like, why should I care about your lore or the world that you're building? So that's my basic thoughts on it. I was really sad. I had really high hopes for this after loving Volume 1 Black Cross so much. So I was really surprised at how much I did not like Cross of War. And it's probably the first comics volume where I'm like really kind of meh on it, and probably wouldn't, like, if someone asked me if they needed to read it, I'd probably say you can skip this one. Whereas pretty much all the other ones, Trial by Fire, Setting Sun, Black Cross, and like all the stuff like Brahmin and Subject 4, The Fall and the Chain, like all of those, I'm like, you should read those if you're an Assassin's Creed fan. This is like the first one where I'm like, I think you can probably skip it and it's not a huge deal. But that's just me. So I know it sounds like I'm super negative, but I didn't hate it. I just wasn't that crazy about it, and it felt kind of skippable. But I would love to hear what you guys think, if I'm alone in this, or if you guys agree with me, or if you disagree, how you feel about it. Please let me know in the comments, as always. I really appreciate those of you that have been contributing and your thoughts to it. And on that note, why don't we end with this quote from the Brainwashed Kami. This is from the last episode on Black Cross Volume 1. I found this a really interesting comment. So as always, we feature comments from the previous episodes that I found interesting. Brainwashed Kami points out, what exactly do the assassins do to further their goals when they're not fighting the Templars? Because it seems to me that the Templars do a lot when not fighting the assassins to build their new world. They have conspiracies that require long, precise work from the shadows and tedious manipulation of society. The assassins seem like one small flea in the way of the Templars' mission. And then it keeps going on, and it basically pointing out that, like, the assassins kind of feel like they exist only to kind of fight the Templars, whereas the Templars are constantly busy doing other things to further their goals. And I thought that was a really interesting point to make, because it's true, you don't really see a whole lot of assassins. I mean, assassins are... I don't know if I 100% agree with this assessment, because assassins do spend their time kind of removing people who would seek to control the human race. So people in power are not necessarily Templars, and so assassins will go after those people. But most of the time they are somewhat affiliated with the Templars, and so you could easily see how it feels like the assassins just spend all their time fighting the Templars, and that's like all they do, whereas the Templars actually have to build governments and actually carry out long, complicated plans. And part of what makes me feel like this is really interesting to me is that there's this really famous quote from Haytham in Assassin's Creed 3 when he's talking to Connor, and he's saying, I think it's during the final boss fight, I could be wrong, it's either that or the rooftop, but I'm pretty sure it's during the final boss fight, where he says, like, we require no creed. Like, the Templars require no creed to follow. We only need the world to remain as it is. And his basic point, the thrust of his point being that the assassins will never defeat the Templars, because the Templars are kind of the natural state of things. And so the thing I think is really interesting with this comment is you can kind of look at it as supporting or not supporting Haytham's argument, depending on your point of view, I think. And it's kind of raises a good point, I think, that the assassins don't really do much on their own besides kind of disrupt other people trying to do things. And so that almost raises a question of, what is the natural state of man? Is it one that reflects more of the free will assassin ideology, or does it reflect more of the Templar ideology? And I think you could look at it both ways, whereas you could say if there were never any assassins, that people would just always... some people would always want control and to impose their will upon others. Or you could also argue that the natural state of people is that if it weren't for the Templars or similar like-minded people, then the assassins wouldn't need to exist, because all they do is kind of disrupt the people trying to take control of free will. And so I think it's kind of interesting, and it kind of speaks to the nature of, I think the true answer is that this conflict between free will and control, it truly is kind of timeless. And it's not really, I don't think there's actually kind of a natural state of man between them. But anyway, I thought that comment was really cool, and you can really dig into kind of the philosophy of things if you think about it, especially in relation to Haytham's Assassin's Creed 3 speech. Alright, anyway, that's going to do it for today. Thank you all for watching as always. I'll see you on August 1st, where we will be discussing Assassins Volume 3, Homecoming. Until then, I hope you all are having a great time in the book club, and I will see you later. Bye!